Edward Cohen here. This is Tangent PropTech. Thanks for hitting play on another episode. Welcome to the show. If you work in real estate, PropTech, development, or if you're just obsessed with making buildings and cities better, this show is for you. Sometimes the best real estate ideas start with a tangent. Hi, I'm Edward Cohen. Welcome to Tangent. Today, alongside me, I have the Plato of PropTech, ChatGPT on the mic. It's New York's finest, Zach Aarons.
Thank you so much. They do call me the Plato of PropTech, the Socrates of SocGen. I'm Zach Aarons. Welcome to Tangent.
Today, we have the honor to host Zach Schoeffel, co-founder and CEO of Cosign and principal at Eastman Residential. Hi, Zach.
What's up, everybody? Hey, Edward, Zach, thanks for having me.
Where does this podcast find you?
I'm in New York right now, so I'm looking at MSG as we speak. Our office is right across from Penn Station.
So I feel in between two Zachs, which reminds me of a funny show between two ferns, which, do you guys know the name of the host?
Also, Zach, great show. Great show. Honestly, you're in good company right now. Just being around Zach's, it's a blessing.
We should just invite Zach Galifianakis because he actually is a listener of the show. Not sure why, but he is. Let's get started. Zach, so for those of you who are not familiar with Cosign or with Eastman Residential, before we get started, just give us a quick background on what you do.
Sweet. So Eastman Residential is the multifamily affiliate of Eastman Companies. Eastman Companies is my family's real estate firm, started by my grandfather. We have about 5 million square feet of office, retail, industrial, everything except for multi. About 6 years ago, I launched a multi-platform. We have 3,000 units throughout the United States, focusing on opportunistic strategies within the multi-sector. We're the largest buyers of distressed student housing in the country. We buy distressed student housing, which is our primary focus, from Chapel Hill to Myrtle Beach to Fort Wayne to Denver, the state of Washington, basically oversupplied student markets that have the highest and best use as conventional multifamily. It's a great vertical. It generates outsized returns for us and our partners. Through our experience owning, operating multifamily, the biggest operational burden we had is so much traffic, but we were unable to convert them. So my background is using the few other guarantor alternatives that exist, the Guarantors Leap, One App, Liberty, Insurant, and felt like there was a huge gap in the market to create a 100x better product focused on, frankly, dynamic risk is really the biggest kind of metric internally. Renters get denied because of credit. Why should they also be underwritten based on credit? Credit scores are important. They're great, but people pay their rent first. And frankly, just because somebody has a bad and imperfect credit score, that doesn't mean they're not going to be a great quality renter. So we wanted to kind of dissect the two, partnered with my brother, whose background is leading engineering teams at Appfolio, to create the superior guarantor alternative, Cosign.
Fascinating background from a founding team. Not only you have owned, operated, converted multi and student housing, but your brother comes from the PropTech world, from one of the leading PropTech firms, Appfolio. What's not to like? Now, let's talk a bit more about the qualification gap for renters and what you hinted at with dynamic risk. What's wrong with the way we have typically underwritten renters or qualified renters to enter an apartment?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's tough. There's always going to be something wrong with it. There's no perfect way to underwrite everybody. I actually think credit scores are generally like a solid metric, but they're not perfect. And it creates gaps in the market about people that don't have whatever threshold that property manager deems a resident worthy. So Cosign steps in for individuals that don't have a familial guarantor. I would say like this TransUnion is building a different score that is more favorable to renters, that categorizes certain categories a little bit different. But even with that, like you'll still have gaps. Like there's never going to be a perfect algorithm to underwrite renters because they're so different. You have immigrants, you have recent graduates, you have people out of college. The way credit score gets calculated is frankly like there's weightings based on groupings and balances, and also like the time period it's from. So like you can have different groupings and categories. You could have somebody that is a recent graduate, doesn't have a whole lot of credit activity, but basically was late paying Netflix, got sent to collections, and that's one of the few events they have, and that really impacts their credit score because they have no other positive activity on it. They might not have a whole lot of other negative activity on it, but because it's thin, or it's thinner than average, a few negative events impacts their credit score. But at the same time, like, that doesn't mean they're a bad quality renter. Frankly, like, I don't know about you guys, but every other day I love this new Apple update where they basically say unknown spam recently deleted. And for the unknown, I get these texts all the times. Hey, you owe this balance, you owe this balance, you owe this balance, like these spam texts. And I'm sure like some of those could have actually been a real balance. Like, I know for a fact, one, I forgot to pay a doctor copay, $50. I walked out of there. Like, I kept on getting these medical billing decks I thought was fake. Pretty sure it hit my credit score. So there's certain things, like, fortunately, I am somewhat knowledgeable in the space, so like I do have some activity, but it again, there's no perfect score.
It's definitely a tough world when it comes to misinformation and just knowing what's right and what's wrong, and especially when it comes to applying to an apartment and accepting someone to live in your building as a renter. But I love which now should be considered a contrarian take, which you said that actually credit scores aren't that bad at all, because nowadays everyone's just bashing credit scores, and there's a lot of reasons for it. But truly, like you said, there's no perfect way. There might be a perfect way for each person, which means by definition there cannot be a one size fits all. And in this program, we've spoken with Karen Mayo, one of
He's
MetaProp's
great.
companies, that is tackling, in this part of the rental cycle, the fraud, right? Detecting fraud for rental applicants. And
We
about now,
work
like,
hand in hand with a bunch of these Vero 100, a bunch of these, not directly, but a ton of people that we work with, several property managers. We have a significant overlap with some of these large firms, that a lot of these forward thinking tenant screening companies, which are awesome. And I think 100, amazing product, Vero, amazing product, Two Dots, amazing product, Lease, amazing product, Quex, amazing product. These are all great products, and how they Snap, great product, and how they basically are catching fraud. But at the same time, like, you still run into the same issue, which is why if you replace credit score with something else and you find other blockers to prevent fraud, like, there's no perfect way to underwrite every renter. So we step in for people that are determined not to be fraud, but and have enough income, but maybe are in that gray area. So that's where we can help.
and certainly with AI now, it's just a whack-a-mole, cat and mouse, where AI on both sides, right? The applicants may use AI to cheat, and the operator uses AI to filter those out. But Zach, curious, how prevalent is this problem of not being able to accept renters that they want to, or the biggest risk, which is accepting renters they shouldn't have?
It's the biggest problem
Yeah,
facing
yeah.
real estate owners and operators today. So, like, I love using this example. Well, think of the Big House in Michigan. It's the largest football stadium in the United States, 100,000 seats. Whether it's a Taylor Swift concert or a football game, there's 100,000 people there. And 40, let's just say 40,000 of those people can't qualify for their apartment. Like, we know that's not true. We know that there's no way 100,000 seats in the Big House and 40% of those individuals can't qualify for their apartment. 40% of renters can't qualify for their apartment today, which is crazy. And that's because of a broken system, and an imperfect system, I think, is a better word than broken. And that's where Cosign can step in. It's massive. I mean, a lot of owners are blind to conversion rates, and they are not getting occupancy in a place they want to, and they decide to spend more on different marketing solutions and different marketing platforms and other softwares that could hopefully solve that occupancy vacancy problem they're having. But frankly, like, what they should be looking at, what the most important metric is conversion rate. Cosign's that first layer of defense.
Yeah, I think filling apartments is the most important thing a real estate company in the multifamily sector can do. And with the current system, like Zach was saying, you have a lot of people who certainly can pay their rent, get immediately disqualified by antiquated screening techniques and antiquated scoring mechanisms that don't necessarily reflect the reality of someone's cash and earning potential. And then fraud is continuing to explode in the sector. I think the proliferation of Gen AI content visual creation tools has enabled fraudsters to become even more brazen and even faster. They can mock up all types of documents that appear to an unsophisticated property manager to be very real. And while it's important to fill apartments, it's really, really hard, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. It's really hard to kick people out of apartments, even if they're not paying their rent. And this kind of bad debt can drag on for months and months. And then every time an apartment is finally vacated, it costs money to turn it around and put it back on the market. And so not only are managers losing money because they aren't getting their rent paid, they're losing money on legal fees trying to evict the person, and then they lose money on the turn. So it's a huge problem. The way we qualify tenants has to change. It's not just about the FICO score. There are many other elements and data points that go into it. And one of the things that these LLMs have enabled is a much faster and more complex, holistic underwriting process for these individuals.
And it is a case of a few bad apples spoil the building for the rest of people, because then oftentimes operators rather have a unit vacant for a little longer than taking the wrong tenant because they've been burnt already. So truly impacts everyone. So Zach Schofel, in terms of like elements that you may be including to underwrite tenants better, something that always comes to mind is like, why someone that has been paying rent every month on time for years, how is that not taken into account into their credit worthiness almost as much as someone that's been paying
Yeah.
their mortgage on time? And then we also have the rise of the gig economy, that younger generations, recent college grads, gig economy is here to stay and it's only growing.
So it's honestly one of the hardest things to solve for anyone in this space, and frankly, like any consumer facing product, specifically something that touches rent, you have no idea. Like you
Mhm.
actually have zero clue. Like there's some landlords that are cool with you paying a month or 2 months late. You have no idea if somebody pays on time, if somebody doesn't. You have no idea. You have no visibility into that.
What about someone like a company like Built?
I mean, like a company like Built would, but again, I love the Built team, but their demographic is slightly higher tier, and like the majority of the Built renters, like frankly, won't have the same utility again until alternative. Again, on the majority of our pool is first time renters towards people with limited to low credit activity. If you use Built, like it's credit card, you know what I mean? Like you have credit activity. Built has that data, but like it's also not super relevant. It's really tough to abstract someone's ability to pay rent at the time, but like you can see how they've been doing in automobile payments on what they're late for, and like you can get some pretty strong indicators from other things that aren't rent.
Zach Aarons, from your venture hat, how do you see this space? I mean, clearly, as you stated, the most important thing is to fill up the apartments with credit worthy renters and hopefully long term renters, unless you're hoping to increase the rent a lot and then maybe you're hoping to leave, like many buildings in New York City. But in terms of a company like Cosign, they're clearly solving a problem here. But what would you need to see, or what is something that would motivate you to consider it a venture backable business?
Yeah, we've invested in the category before. We invested in Jetty out of our first fund about 9 years ago, which then merged with Rhino. There have been a lot of other companies in the sector. Zach mentioned them. Anything involving residential rent is venture backable, just because the raw addressable market is so large and the transaction size is very large too. You mentioned Appfolio before. Appfolio is a $9 billion market cap company and isn't even the biggest player in property management software for multifamily. Yardi has more doors, for example. So when you see a market that large, we don't usually question, unless it's a super horizontal niche within multifamily, we don't really question whether there's an opportunity to build large companies there. You see RealPage, you see Yardi, you see MRI, you see Appfolio, you see newer companies like Built and Lease AI, Funnel. So there's been a lot of value created over the years. We're talking tens of billions of dollars of enterprise value created over the past 20 or so years just in this one category. And this is a sector that is solving a meaningful pain point for both the renter, the end customer, as well as the property manager, which we like. It has a high average contract value size, which we also like. It's repeatable as well. And it's a relatively high margin business too when executed correctly. The number one thing we look at when we underwrite any insurance product is loss ratio. So if you're a venture capitalist and you see an insurance managing general agent, MGA company, and they're growing their revenue 20x year over year, the first question we ask ourselves is, are they growing exponentially because they're writing terrible policies, which is going to come back to bite them later on, or are they growing exponentially because they've found product market fit and been able to optimize on their marketing strategy? So when we look at insurance businesses, we generally like to see, call it 3x year over year revenue growth. And this is tough to see initially if you're investing at the pre-seed stage, but we like to see that they run a cool book. And so you need your loss ratio to be ideally under 40%. And for some companies, that has proved very challenging. And the number one thing preventing downstream capital from continuing to flow into the sector. It's a slightly different business, but we had a very successful exit recently with Obi, which was a property and casualty MGA insurer. They were writing policies mainly for single family investment properties. Just to put it in perspective, they run a very cool book. They have loss ratios. I don't know exactly where they're at now, but consistently loss ratios under 35%. If you look at Neptune, which is a flood insurance company, one of the few InsurTech IPOs we've had in recent memory, they were able to IPO last year. They had very good growth, good margins, but they boasted a 25% loss ratio, which frankly the lowest I've ever seen. And so clearly the capital markets respond really well to disciplined growth coupled with running a cool book with low loss ratios. That's the most important.
The future of real estate comes together again next September at Blueprint in Las Vegas. You'll join more than 900 built world executives and over 850 startups and investors who are shaping how the industry works from construction to transaction. With trillions of dollars in assets represented and some of the world's best innovators under one roof, this is where the future of the built world takes shape. Blueprint 2026 will be held at the Venetian Las Vegas from September 22nd to 24th. Tangent listeners can save $300 on an all-access pass by visiting blueprintvegas.com/tangent. That's blueprintvegas.com/tangent for $300 off your Blueprint all-access pass.
1000%. I would say specific to this space, like we've had the fortune. I mean, it's been a crazy, I would say, since 2019, and all these other players in the space, like a lot of them have been left naked by their insurance partner because their losses were so bad. And we've had the fortune of being built after the competitors that exist, seeing what went wrong for them during COVID, just kind of being sensitized for different, I would say, outlier events. So agreed. I mean, like if you don't have a healthy loss run, like the company's worth nothing. So it's important that like there is in all insurance related companies that there's a great data science team, an actuarial team, and a risk management team in place, making sure like the risk is both underwritten properly, losses are trending well, and just frankly like having a cool book, a super attractive book that insurers like that, because there's so much insurance related product out there where like, which is not a cool book. Like you have a ton of volatility year over year, and like there's so much capital out there with insurance. Today, capital insurance is all-time highs because a lot of super interesting, going on a quick tangent, like software company stocks have been absolutely diving. Capital providers want stable returns. Where can you get stable returns? Private credit, a little bit overvalued today that people would argue. And then ultimately, like you have insurance and then you have bonds. And insurance, it's like you're able to get slightly higher returns than bonds. But like these capital providers, they want a cool book. So if you do have a cool book, there's a ton of liquidity out there. But Zach, I agree with everything you said.
So how is Cosign different from the traditional guarantors or the lease insurance or the security deposit replacements?
Sure. So I would say security deposit alternatives and guarantor alternatives are different. They're completely different products. Like the way they look at rent, like I would say historically, like they operate pretty much similar by looking at credit scores, but like it's a completely different user base generally that needs one versus the other. Like there is some crossover, but the average renter profile is very far apart. And how we evaluate our renters is by basically looking at several metrics related to their renter behaviors, trade lines, recency, multi-step calculation.
Cosign different from traditional guarantor services or lease insurance or the security deposit placements?
Security deposit alternatives and guarantor alternatives, they're completely different use cases. Like generally, like they actually have been underwritten the same, which has been credit score based, which makes no sense because the average demographic profile that uses one and one that uses the other is completely different. And like the renter profile of a guarantor alternative, thin credits, limited credit activity, first time renters. So that person needs to be viewed differently. And you really need to kind of dive deep into that renter's profile and like how do we evaluate that person's ability to pay rent, which is frankly our metric for acting as that guarantor, is how well have they been paying over the past 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, up to 24 months, focused on recency, kind of analyzed by trade line and trade line category. And ultimately, like that's the bulk of our metric, which determines the renter's ability to kind of fulfill their lease obligations. And that's our North Star. Internally, like we want to basically create a system that we can analyze anybody, point at any renter in the United States and be like, is this person going to fulfill their lease obligations or will this person not be able to? So that's what we work towards day in and day out.
As a founder of a company that the category has been around for a while, now we have exciting new tools like the LLMs and other more complex forms of underwriting renters. How are you being able to open the door to, like, are you seeing more success currently at replacing previous existing or entering new
No.
buildings that didn't even use guarantor services in the past?
I would say this, the majority of the existing incumbents are solid products. I think they have great teams that are building and scaling these companies. And frankly, like I have nothing bad to say about any of them. Like I think the majority of our growth has been from people that don't use any guarantor alternative or have never heard of a guarantor alternative or was confused on what a guarantor alternative was. We say this to people that use the competitive set. I wouldn't rush tomorrow and switch. You're offering a great utility, but is there an opportunity to get a materially higher conversion rate elsewhere? Probably. And like if you're struggling with conversion rate, then we recommend you try us and see if you think we're the optimal, the better solution. But like very small percentage of our customer base, very, very small, are people that have switched over. It's not that we've lost them and they're like, hey, I want to stay. Like it just hasn't been our focus. Like it really is a large white space. And similar to kind of Flex's growth, Flex had to educate people what a guarantor alternative was. What is flexible rent? How does it work? We feel like we're doing a lot of the same. So we've been putting together a ton of resources to both educate renters and property managers and like why a guarantor alternative is so important. Why do so many people not have access to guarantor alternative? And it's been successful.
I love it. So, did I get this correct that Mark Cuban, the shark, invested in Cosign?
That's correct. We had our initial fundraising round.
I mean, he sees probably thousands of deals a year, or at least that's what we think on TV. What did you say or show that made him believe that this was a real problem worth solving, or that you had the right team, which I think you do?
It's a great question. We got introduced through a mutual friend, and frankly, like We had a launch event in Dallas where I interviewed him, and he's awesome. He's just a great guy. Like I look up to him, what he's been able to do in his career, both personally, professionally, kind of family life. And he's made some real estate investments over the years. Like it's never been a focus. He's never done really bad in it. He's been familiar, like especially like during COVID, like rising bad debt because in investments that he's either made or been adjacent to because people haven't paid their rent. And simultaneously, he's kind of also come across instances of like being familiar with conversion rates, questioning why so many people are getting denied for the choice apartment. So all of those kind of themes that he's seen in his life over the past few years before Cosign, he really related to it. The fact that it is a highly focused, mission-driven solution. At the same time, it's a good business. So I think like a big part about what he's doing with cost plus drugs, which is awesome, and a big part of his investment mandate is like investing to make money, but also investing for the betterment of society, which is something that I relate to and everyone on our team relates to, and we're super passionate about. And frankly, like it's like the heart of our company ethos is like create more housing choice. He was all over it.
So Mark Cuban 2028. I heard you right.
He is my vote.
I think Zach is just being shy because Mark Cuban saw him shoot some hoops and then he was like, I'm in.
That could also be true. I can't confirm or deny.
Last question before the last one. So talk about AI more specifically. Like, how are you fitting it into your processes? Anything you can share? Any insights?
Yeah, I would say this, and I don't want to give away our secret sauce, but we're a small lean team. We have a head of AI whose job is basically to every week analyze a different business group, automate, analyze a different business group, automate, analyze a different business group, automate. Like it's one of the reasons why I feel like we can have such insane outcomes with the mean lean team of no more than 30. At the same time, he also educates, works alongside me to educate and upskill the rest of the team from like our HR to our executive assistants to our finance ops. Like everybody is leaning in head first into AI. They need to. Like it's not that they're not doing it. One, they want first into AI. They need to. Like it's not that they're not doing it. One, they want to, which is why they're on the team in the first place. But also like they need to. We need to. It's about to be hyper competitive over the next few years, and it's giving us such an unfair advantage in our growth, leaning into it kind of head first now. And like when I say AI, like they're not using Claude, they're not using ChatGPT, like they're using Claude code. Non-engineers that have no idea, that have never done a code in their entire life, are using Claude code and co-work. They live in it all day long. It's pretty special. It's pretty cool to see.
Biggest difference between being a founder and being a real estate principal.
It's so funny. Things move so slow in real estate. Like, and I like to think I move on the faster end of those in real estate, but like things move so slow and startups move so fast. And I mean, in our office right now, half our office is Eastman, the other half is Cosign, and they're very synergistic. Like, I mean, a big part of our growth at Cosign is because we're domain experts. We understand the problem. Like, if we have a question about a certain feature, we go to our asset management team, which is 10 feet away. What do you think about this? But I would say just speed, 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 speed.
Collaboration superpower. If you could choose one person, historic or living, to do a partnership with, who would it be? And please don't choose Elon Musk or Steve Jobs because I know you're gonna pick Elon Musk.
No, I was gonna pick Elon Musk. Maybe Jared Kushner,
We haven't gotten Jared here.
Robert Downey Jr. I fucking love Robert Downey Jr. Like he's
That's
such a good
Elon Musk on
actor.
screen, bro.
I know, I know. That's Elon Musk on screen. Probably him, maybe Timothy Chalamet. I don't know, maybe Khloe Kardashian.
I mean, to be honest, Marty Supreme, for those who watched it or not, there's just not a single redeeming moment in the whole movie until like the very end. Zach Aarons, who's your collaboration superpower this week?
I was gonna say Timothée, but it's taken. He's in a little hot water these days. I wish him the best. It's kind of strange to diss the art form that your sister and mother do or did. I'm sure he'll find his way. So, we're talking about rental housing. So, my collaboration superpower for this week is a little known architect and real estate developer, originally from France, moved to New York to live the American dream. His name was Philippe Hubert. He's widely credited with inventing the modern rental apartment here in New York City in 1884. Now, plenty of folks rented tenement apartments, but those people were renting because they had to, because of financial situation, not because they necessarily wanted to. The Hotel Chelsea was really the first. He also invented the cooperative model here in New York, but it was the first building positioned towards people who had disposable income and means to want to live in an apartment as opposed to detached home. And then many other buildings started proliferating. The Dakota, probably the most famous of those. And New York since has been a city really defined and governed by apartment buildings. So Philippe Hubert, little known hero in the New York real estate story.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to do a Wikipedia deep dive on him tonight. I spend too much time on Wiki and I love it.
He did the Hawthorne, the Rembrandt, the Milano, the Chelsea. I've seen some of those in the city, in Manhattan.
He was absolutely prolific, and invented a whole concept. So I would imagine he would have some great ideas for modern apartment living and design. I know Jeff's always pushing me, well, why would you want to collaborate with him? Well, if he was that innovative back then, I'm sure he would be doing magnificent stuff with Claude Code.
Zach Schofield, where can Tangent listeners and multifamily owners and operators learn more about Cosign and connect with you?
Rentwithcosign.com and follow me on LinkedIn, Zach Schofield.
And if any of our Tangent listeners find themselves in Livingston, New Jersey and want the best coffee, where can they go?
That's awesome. My mom has a coffee shop. It is the best coffee I've ever had. It's called Twisted Tulip. It's based in Livingston, New Jersey. I highly recommend it.
Thank you so much for coming to Tangent today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Muchas gracias. And thank you for listening to this episode of Tangent PropTech. If you learned something new or enjoyed the conversation, text a friend the link to this episode right now. You can find links, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes, or reach out anytime at tangentcommunity@gmail.com. We love interview suggestions, topic ideas, or just a friendly hello. If you're building something impactful in real estate or tech and want to reach our audience of decision makers, investors, and operators, email us. That's tangentcommunity@gmail.com.